Have you ever told a scary story like this? For our younger crowd, this is a flashlight. And yes, back in olden times, it used to be a separate object from your phone. Crazy, I know. I used to do this all the time as a kid. There's something about this lighting that creates just the right atmosphere. And as the person holding the light, you also hold the attention of those around you, as well as the ability to influence what happens next. My favorite way to punctuate a scary story was to suddenly shine the light on someone else. While the light still comes from me, all of a sudden the light and the attention of others are focused on you. The situation goes from being my story to yours. And the question is, what will you do next? How will you act when the light shines on you? In our last small group series, which we wrapped up here on our YouTube channel last week, make sure you're subscribed, by the way, we talked about who God isn't. This week, we're starting a new series where we'll discover who God says He is. This series is called I Am. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because if you've been joining us online for church on Sunday mornings, you've already heard a few messages from the I Am series from the platform. But as we head towards Easter in just a few weeks, we wanted to take a look at some of the topics raised in I Am and see how they can apply more directly to your life, the life of a student. So, let's kick off this series with a closer look at Jesus' statement, I am the light. Whether we know it or not, we are all in one way or another trying to define God. And that's exactly what we're looking at in this series. There are 7 statements in the Bible where Jesus defines himself, and by extension, God, that all begin with the words, I am. We'll be looking at 2 of these statements, starting with, I am the light. Before we get to Jesus' statement, we have to go back and learn how light was first brought into the world. So we start off in the book of Genesis and some of the very first verses of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So we have an interesting dynamic here. On one hand, we have the Spirit of God present amongst all He has just created. On the other hand, we have darkness. Because the earth is formless and empty at this point, darkness fills a kind of gap here. But let's take a look at what God does next. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. God creates light. Why? What does light do? It illuminates the dark. It allows us to see life in its fullest beauty. And because He is God, He knows instantly that the light is good and separates it from the darkness. While this light illuminates all that we see around us and creates morning and day, it isn't a beacon. It isn't the same light that reveals secrets and dangers and reveals what lies on the path before us. Jesus is that light. God knew this, and that's why He sent Jesus to us. So let's jump ahead to the book of John. The story we pick up here is still early in Jesus' ministry, where He is starting to become well known amongst the people. However, this new notoriety has caused quite a stir. Some of the people question if Jesus is who He says He is. And for others, the idea that Jesus was sent to earth by God to save them is, well, blasphemy, heresy, or as we might say it nowadays, yo, that's crazy. Jesus encounters a group of Jewish teachers, also known as Pharisees, who specifically question how the man standing before them could possibly be the Messiah. Here's what he tells them. When Jesus spoke again to the people, He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus speaks twice here about the light. Not just any light, but a light that can only come from God. But what's interesting here is that we can see both Jesus and God embodied. Jesus says that He is the light of the world. He carries the same light that God created to illuminate everything we see, that creates morning and day. But Jesus also says that whoever follows Him will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The light that God sent in the form of Jesus so that we on earth can follow it. The light that reveals secrets and shows us danger, but also the light we follow to find direction and understanding. Psalm 119 says that your word, the word of Jesus or God, is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path. By following Jesus and the light that only He can provide, we can walk down the path that takes us where God wants us to be. If you're looking for proof of that, you can find some right here, sitting in front of you. For a lot of you, I probably came out of nowhere into this role. And in a lot of ways, I did. What most of you don't know is the years of backstory. For a long time, I didn't think Jesus or church or any of this was for me. I had built the life that I thought I wanted, but it was hollow and without meaning. And it all reached a breaking point where God shattered the plans I had. Even though I had begun to see the cracks in the life I was living, seeing it all come crashing down still broke me, and I had no idea where to go or what to do next. But through invitations and encouragement from close friends, I found my way to church. And by learning about God and seeing the profound way He was working in the lives of the people at our church, I began to see the light that only Jesus can provide. Catching a glimpse of that light working in a real and tangible way opened a door for me and led me down a path where I not only saw and believed in the light of Jesus, but eventually came to wake up and walk in that light every day. But our role doesn't end there. We can't just walk in the light that we are afforded by being followers of Jesus. We are called to more than that. Let's look at one final story that tells us how. In the book of Matthew, Jesus gives perhaps His most famous teaching in the Bible, called the Sermon on the Mount. Now, this sermon is heard by huge crowds by the time Jesus is finished, but it doesn't start out that way. It starts with Jesus speaking to His disciples, a close group of people who have devoted themselves to following Him. Jesus says to them, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Jesus tells His followers to not just follow Him and walk in His light, but He tells them that they are the light as well. Now, Jesus is well within His capability to carry the light all on His own, or put His lamp under a bowl, as He phrased it. But He doesn't do that. He instead gives the light to all that choose to follow Him, everyone in His house. And in this way, the light is with everyone, and shines bright enough that it cannot be hidden. Earlier, I asked what you would do if the light were focused on you. And the fact is, it's not just focused on you. It's more than that. For those of you who have chosen to follow Jesus, just like His disciples were told, you are the light of the world. The light that Jesus carries, you now carry. What will you do with it? Jesus told His disciples, and by extension tells us, to let the light shine before others. What does that mean to you, especially in today's world? If you have chosen to follow Jesus, if you have accepted Him into your life, you have received the greatest gift you could ever receive. And you know that despite whatever obstacle, whatever sickness comes, in the end, Jesus wins. So what Jesus calls us, His followers, to do, and my charge to you as we head over to our Discord server, is to carry that light into the world. Even amongst the darkness that surrounds us today, don't be afraid to be what Jesus was, is, and calls us to be, a light in the darkness.